All right, my friends, I am super excited to say that we have a 2022 GR86 Premium with a 6-speed manual transmission, and I'm going to be comparing it to that car, which is my 2013 Scion FR-S. Now, I've already done a video reviewing the 2022 BRZ. This car is going to be very similar to that. What's unique about this is that, number one, this car is pretty much stock, whereas the BRZ had a few mods, and I also have my 2013 FR-S here to compare it immediately after on the same exact road. So this car is mostly stock except for Carbotech XP10 brake pads, as well as Motul 600 brake fluid. And the engine noise was disabled prior to delivery by the owner at the dealership before he even picked it up. Now, owner tracks this vehicle. He tracked it last week, said it was a lot of fun. However, he couldn't hear the engine noise, so he's going back to the shop tomorrow to re-enable it. So with that being said, let's go and give this a spin. You know, one thing I've seen other reviews comment on is the behavior of the turn signal. And I gotta say, even that first moment I went to the BRZ, it's intuitive. There's no problem with it. And I have never hit it. Like it always does exactly what I want it to do. If you light press it, it's just the three indicators, and then you're done for like a lane change. And if you want to hold it, you press it past the first stop. So I have no issue with this at all, despite what a lot of reviewers have been saying. Now, one of the concerns I had after driving the 2022 BRZ is the steering on this second generation, because they did make some changes to the EPS unit. And I was concerned since I really didn't like it in the BRZ. It had some weird off-center feel, on-center and slightly off-center feel. It really detracted from my enjoyment of the vehicle, because steering to me is so critical in a sports car like this. And I'm happy to say that on this car, steering feels totally fine. So I think with the BRZ, the main issue was actually the alignment. The owner tracked it, had some trauma to the suspension components, got it aligned, but it was still kind of off. So that was probably the issue there. He also had aftermarket wheels and tires. Not sure how much that contributed. But in this car, steering feels great. I mean, you have the softer touch to the actual steering wheel, which I think might dull just some of the higher frequency notes in terms of feedback. But by and large, I feel that this is more similar than different to the 2013 FR-S that I drive, other than it being not quite as heavy of a steering rack. Now, the owner did request that I do not disable traction control, so I cannot comment on the loading up and releasing with oversteer and such. But I can tell you that the steering on this car, not a problem for me at all. The engine, obviously, people go on and on about how it totally transforms the vehicle. It makes the vehicle, I guess, more balanced, right? It doesn't go from a slow car to a fast car. It just goes from a slow car to a well-rounded car. You know what I mean? So I don't want people to get overhyped by the engine, because it is a much faster car, but it doesn't really, the equation, the core philosophy of the car is the same. It's just a slight tweak to address the deficiency. Now, in terms of the engine noise, this sounds way more natural to me, because again, I drove the 2022 BRZ that had the fake engine noise, and I really didn't like it. It sounded very harsh to my ears. I think sometimes with these piped in, speaker engine noises, it sounds kind of sibilant. It sounds kind of harsh to your ears, and I think that's because you have spikes around 8,000 plus hertz, and to your ears it sounds just very unpleasant. I don't have that issue at all with this car. But again, the owner says that he can't hear it on track, which makes shifting very hard. He has to keep looking down to the tachometer. But what I would initially think is that my first solution would be considering adding headers and exhaust rather than re-enabling the module. But that's just me, right? He says that, yeah, it'll probably annoy him driving to and from the racetrack, but once he's on the racetrack, it'll probably make him a better driver and just, safer, because he can intuitively sense from the noise what's going on with his engine, where he's at. He also mentioned that the damping on this second generation is not really all that well done. It's a little bit too harsh, and on the racetrack he's getting a lot of vibrations. I'll say on this road, which is decently smooth, I'm not having any issues. It feels actually quite good. My 2013 FR-S can sometimes get a bit harsh. That first generation was the harshest, I believe. They did continue to tweak it and improve it 2014, 2015, or sorry, 2016, I think, with the refresh. But in terms of how this loads up, how this behaves, how this handles the bumps, yep, single bump and it absorbs. It doesn't keep undulating. It's not too harsh. Yeah, this is a great driver's car. A dying breed. Cheap, front engine, rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual. Oh, another thing, because I drove my car to this spot, right? So I just got out of my car, got into this car. The gear selector, the transmission, it's definitely better in terms of shifting across gears. Same as what I was mentioning in the 2022 BRZ review. Same thing. I like the transmission more, for sure. It is more forgiving as well with the shifts. In my car, if I don't nail it perfectly, I get a little bit of a judder. It feels a little bit more raw. This is more refined, a little bit more grown up. If my car is t-shirt and gym shorts, this car is casual button down and jeans. If that makes sense. And also these Carbotech pads, I gotta say, they're very noisy, but they have a lot of bite. They inspire confidence, easy to modulate. Maybe I should consider this for my next set of track pads. You notice the difference in power so much when you're going uphill. My car would be so anemic. Oh, there's my car. We'll be trying that out right after this. Yeah, I'm on the wait list for one of these cars. My main concern is still that it's not a big enough of a jump for me to optimize the learning curve. Because again, my journey with this car channel, as well as just my obsession with cars, is to improve my driving technique. And while this is a decent power bump, I'm not sure if it's enough to, like, will I outgrow this car on the racetrack after a handful of sessions? I don't know. What I'm tempted to do is to buy one and then actually do headers, tune, do some aftermarket suspension. Because the camber, OEM, these have like almost no camber at all. So they tend to understeer at the limit before they give way to oversteer. By adding just a couple degrees of camber to the front, I hear it transforms the vehicle. But even on my FR-S, I'm running the stock OEM suspension setup. So I can't quite comment on that. It's even easier to heel and toe in this vehicle. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because this is more forgiving with the clutch. And the clutch here is lighter compared to my car as well, because remember, I have removed the assist spring in my car. It gives a little bit better feel of knowing exactly where that engagement point is, and I like that. I don't mind having a slightly heavier clutch. I mean, if you're young and healthy and you squat, I'm sure you won't even feel any fatigue on your left leg. I do think that if you are going to track and daily a single vehicle, it's hard to beat this. The Miata, not practical enough. This car, you can fit things in, from Costco. I do that all the time in my vehicle. It's my one and only car. It's a little bit more refined, a little more grown up, more power. Like, if you are on the fence between, I guess, getting this one for a little bit more versus getting the first gen at a discount used, I would just pony up and get this. The only question, I think, is if you have the first gen, how much is it really worth it to upgrade? And that comes down to, okay, what's the price you can get for your car, for your first gen on the used market right now. Right now it is pretty inflated, so that's why I'm trying to rush and sell my car, and I can get one of these for cheap, right? Relatively speaking, I'm not going to be losing that much money. But then if you are like me in your driver improvement, driver skill, track day journey, I don't know if this is going to be enough of a bump to really challenge you. This and the first generation, they're more similar than different, you know? The way this behaves, it is... People used to call the first generation a baby Cayman, and I would agree with that assessment. It's got a little bit of that telepathic kind of sense. It does what you expect it to do. It's very easy to control at the limit. Definitely a very strong driver's car. You really can't go wrong if you're considering getting one of these. All right, welcome to my car. This is a 2013 Scion FR-S. Got it brand new, July of 2013, and I've been driving it ever since. So it's almost 9 years old. We have 80,000 miles on the odometer. Now, right off the bat, the power is very much lacking. What I've done on this car is equal length headers, catless. I think these are the JDL 421s, as well as an Ecutech tune and CSG Touring 8.6 exhaust. Also an oil cooler, but that doesn't really help with performance, that just helps with track day temperatures. And wheels, I have these Apex wheels with Michelin Pilot Super Sport 4S wrapped, which are 245 width all around, square setup. And right off the bat, biggest thing, yeah, obviously the power. The steering in this, I do prefer. It's a little bit heavier. I do feel a little bit more feedback, for sure. It's a noticeable difference, but it's not a massive difference. I'm not unhappy with the new gen, but I do prefer this old gen steering rack. It feels a little bit more, I mean, part of it is probably I'm just biased and used to it too, but I feel like it has more feedback, a little bit more steering feel. Yeah, this engine, even with my mods, this engine is so lackluster, so anemic. And right now, around 5,000 RPM, it sounds like a garbage disposal. It sounds terrible. I'm going flat out right now. We are going uphill, so keep that in mind. Oh man, this sounds... I mean, the new generation doesn't sound great, but it sounds better than this. Good God. My suspension is absolutely harsher than that 2022 GR86. A lot bumpier. In terms of body roll, the two seem very similar in that they are quite relatively flat, actually. Gear selector, transmission, definitely stronger in the newer generation. It inspires more confidence. It's a little bit easier to go across gears. This one is notchier. It feels more raw. And also my brakes. Yeah, my brakes are not nearly as bitey and grabby. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. I'm running these Ferodo DS2500 brake pads, and I also have Motul 600 brake fluid. I just changed out the rotor. My front right rotor was warped. Changed that out last week. And I did some pads as well at the same time. But those Carbotechs seem better suited, is my initial impression. I didn't push the car that hard. So some of you might be wondering, why am I still driving a 9-year-old 2013 Scion FR-S? And the biggest reason actually is because of some great advice I got from a friend. When I first started tracking, he said, Kevin, don't buy the Cayman. First get really good at this car. Explore your limits, improve as a driver, and then when you step up to the Cayman, you'll be in a much better position. If you go to the Cayman initially, then you're gonna have too much car, not enough skill, and it's going to hamper your driver development because you can't reach the limit quite as easily. So I think that makes perfect sense, actually. That is exactly what I tell newbie drivers as well who want to improve their driving technique. But I've been trying to get rid of this car and get the new one since last year, November. Back when I was calling the dealerships, they didn't even know what the GR86 was. They're like, oh, you mean the GT86, the 2021? And I got on some wait lists, and I refused to pay over MSRP. I'm now next in line, but anyways, we'll see what happens. My car is also definitely more noisy and raw than the new 2022 GR86, which I don't like as much. I mean, a lot of people talk about how they love that old, raw feeling of 90s sports cars as an example, and I get that, but in a car that's this modern, I feel like the polish of the 2022 GR86 is more fitting. Like, the rawness of this isn't adding more driver engagement. It's not endearing. It's just kind of like cheap, janky shittiness because it's a $26,000 car, right? If I'm not perfect with my shifts, I feel it. I can feel the engine get pulled up or down with the revs if I'm not precise with my downshifts. Main takeaways: the two cars are much more similar than different. You're going to have a slightly different electric power steering rack on the newer generation. I think it's not quite as good, but it's 95% there. The transmission on the newer one is definitely superior. You have, it's less notchy. It's a lot easier to get into gear and also across gears. Definitely feels better. The clutch is a little bit more forgiving in terms of if you don't match your downshift exactly right, then you're not going to really notice it. It's not going to be jerky at all. In terms of suspension, it is softer compared to my 2013 first gen, but again, keep in mind that the first gen did have different suspension setups over the years with their mid-cycle refresh and such. The engine obviously is the biggest difference. The newer generation has a much improved engine. I think it sounds better with the engine sound, the artificial engine sound, disabled, and compared to this engine, it also sounds better. The torque dip has been more or less resolved and totally cured. If you see the actual chart, it's still slightly there, but I don't notice it at all when I'm driving. Overall, such a fine evolution of that first generation into this second generation. We as car enthusiasts are really lucky to have this vehicle. But that is it, my friends. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my 2022 BRZ review. Much love, and I'll see you guys there.